When you dare to share, you break the silence. When you dare to share, you speak your truth. When you dare to share, you use the full strength of your voice. When you dare to share, it brings opportunity to own your story. So tell it, be heard, and at the same time, your sharing is someone else's learning, inspiration, motivation, empowerment, and hope. There's always an element to each of our stories that remains a secret. For some, we feel it's a dirty little secret. Dare to share your untold story exposes these secrets in a welcoming and positive way. I encourage each of you out there to dare yourself to share what is yours to tell. When we dare, it is the courage to do something really important. Let this be a vow to each and every single one of us that we take risk, we brave, confront, and face what is, while inspiring and empowering all communities. So let's break that silence and tap into mental beauty. This is Salima Jadavji, your podcast host, a practicing social worker, and your mental wellness connoisseur. Welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast, episode number 130. The story she stopped editing, healing through the language of scars. To all my fellow listeners, before we get started, I'm just dropping in a note to give you a heads up that this podcast might be emotionally triggering for you. We do invite guests onto the show who share openly about extremely difficult life moments with exposure and impact of what the struggles have been like. The intensity of each episode could have a variable impact on your emotional and mental well-being based on your own personal story. If at any point the topic becomes uncomfortable or upsetting to you in any way, please do not pressure yourself to listen. Instead, be kind to yourself, do some self-care, and perhaps give another episode a try. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing our courageous and daring guest, Tracey Brown. Tracey's journey into understanding how our mind is set was born from trauma. The literal flames of life-threatening burns at the age of 8 and the trauma associated with years of search and rescue and marine safety in the United States Coast Guard. She tells her story of navigating over 30 years of undiagnosed post-traumatic stress disorder, focused on the years in the Coast Guard in her number 1 book, Rescue to Recovery, but seldom speaks about the years of wandering after being burned. While working as a scar tissue therapist, Tracey realized that there are great similarities between physical and emotional injuries, and left unaddressed, they have similar ways of limiting us. Tracey's mission is to help others understand that we have great power in our choices and we can train our mind to serve our highest good. She is the former director of mentors and facilitator of mental fitness at the Polk Institute and a veteran of the United States Coast Guard. Well. Tracey, welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast.
I am very excited to be here, and I look forward to all that we get to share.
Amazing. I'm so happy that you're here, that you're on the show today, that I was able to grab you and have you be part of it. Really, I'm just thrilled. And I'm also grateful for your willingness to be here, be willing to have that open conversation today. I'm also truly humbled to encounter guests just like you, especially when it's an opportunity for me to be able to tap into people's vulnerabilities, draw on their strengths and their insight and all the inspiration that gets shared into the space. It's just really incredible. And for me, it's really important that we take a stance together to help break barriers of mental stigma. So, what do you think, Tracey?
I am all in. I've had way too many years in those stigmas and limiting myself and limiting the things that I could experience and share. And that's really kind of the game, right? That's what we're here is on this planet to do, is to relate. And I was limiting myself because of those stigmas. So I'm all in.
Oh, wonderful. I love it. All in. And in case you're still wondering, this podcast is all about bringing forward untold stories that people go through, whether directly about a mental health struggle or something else. And we know that no matter the story, there is impact on one's own mental health in some way which remains tucked away. And this platform, it serves in a way to break the barriers of mental stigma that have been conditioned in our society. So today, like together, you and I, that hopeful mission of mine is really for both of us to be able to encourage people to share and tell what individuals typically have reservation to express. And of course, I continue bringing forward a trend, and it's called the mental beauty rethink. So, Tracey, tell me, what pops into your mind immediately when you hear this phrase, the mental beauty rethink?
The fact that you're talking about mental beauty is really awesome because there's a huge, and we go back to the word stigma
Mm-hmm.
of, mental health. The minute you say mental health, people have this negative connotation.
Right.
When in fact it's not. The breaking through and the breaking out is a beautiful thing. I mean, it's like what the butterfly in the cocoon. Yes, a cocoon is not very pretty, but when it breaks out, it's this gorgeous butterfly. But we go through that transformation. I like changing language. Changing the language around our mental health is huge. And I love mental beauty because it gives you this sense of beauty and life and all that is good. And I think it's amazing.
Oh, I love that you think that. And that is one of the sticking points is when we hear the words mental health or mental wellness, there's like a judgment, right? Like something about it being good or bad. There's like something that sort of judges, what it's supposed to be, the outcome. And so I think that's what it really inspired me to look at what's a way of embracing it all. And mental beauty is what came to mind. It was meant to sort of culminate like physical wellness, mental wellness, like all parts of our being, parts that are working, that are not working, ailments and all, and being able to accept ourselves individually as we are right now in that individual moment and in any given individual moment. And that the more that we're able to do that for ourselves, essentially it allows us to do that for others and to be able to accept others with their fullness and wholeness.
So true. That's the game, right? That's the relational thing.
And so I really liked what you said because you were saying breaking through and out. A lot of the work I do, not just in the podcast, but in other parts, is all related to the butterfly and the transformation and cocooning. I spend a lot of time in the therapy space supporting people and many individuals through that process, not the outcome. Learning to breathe and breathe through it and break out and all the stuff that happens in between is the most important thing. And we must be able to do it. It's healthy for us to be able to do it when we're focusing on those moments without judgment.
That's the key right there is without judgment. We're so conditioned to judge because I don't know about you, but when I was younger, a statement would be made and then at the end of it it's like, and that's good. And then or a statement would be made and it's like, and that's bad. And so we get this conditioning of, something is good, something's bad when actually everything is in process.
Right. And so we have these positive and negative connotations that get associated with certain terms and words. But yeah, I also liked what you said about changing the language because that's essentially what I was also doing by creating something like this mental beauty and then the mental beauty rethink. I wanted it to be something invitational where people had an opportunity to think about things without that chatter and the other noise that comes up. And so it changes the ripple effect of your thoughts.
Yeah. Well, language, your words are powerful. The spoken word is powerful. It's the spoken word. It's not the thought. The thoughts are powerful too. But, our thoughts become our habits, right? And so, spoken word, when we speak something out, there's something that resonates within us that's even more powerful than our thoughts.
Right. We get to pause. We get to ask questions. We get to reflect. We get to engage in this full process when the approach is invitational.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Well, this is great. I'm so loving where this is going. So basically, Tracey, it's time. I'm ready to dive deep with you today and uncover your untold story. Are you ready?
I'm always ready.
Oh, I love it. Always ready.
It's actually the Coast Guard, Semper Paratus, always prepared.
You're always prepared.
And I wasn't before, but I am now.
You are now. Well, I'm glad that you feel prepared today and that your claim very firmly, I'm always ready. So let's go for it. Tracey, give us the newspaper headline of how you would title your untold story. What would it say?
The girl who thought she knew everything and then realized she knew nothing.
The girl who thought. Say it one more time.
The girl who thought she knew everything and realized she knew nothing.
Okay.
And it's just kind of a spin-off of, when I was younger, because I was in such a protected mode,
Mm-hmm.
I had to know everything, or at least pretend like I knew everything.
Mm-hmm.
What I used to say a lot is somebody would say something, and I was like, yeah, I know. I just had to kind of have this fake sense of understanding.
It was your way of responding to people, right?
Yeah, and it was my protection because yeah, I know. And if I know, that statement shuts the brain out, and if I already know, then I don't have to explore.
Right.
So the not knowing is a place where we get to explore.
Mm-hmm.
I've come to a place where it's like, I really don't know anything. And if I can approach things from that place of not knowing, then I'm going to have a lot more questions, and those questions are going to lead me to a lot of more interesting places than a shutdown statement of, yeah, I know that, and then close my mind off to anything else.
Right. Well, there you have it. Tracy's headline: The girl who thought she knew everything and realized she knew nothing. Powerful and very meaningful. So let's move forward. Tell us what your untold story is all about. Give us your snapshot.
We don't realize how much trauma affects us until we realize how much it has affected us.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize you just kind of deal with things in the moment. I was always very good at crisis management because I was in a lot of crisis management in my life. So you deal with it. But if you don't debrief, because really, I just didn't know that. And so I just kept getting deeper, deeper, and deeper into a very small circle of life. My world got smaller because I just didn't want to talk. I didn't want to expand because I couldn't hold on to the narrative anymore.
Right. So give us a little more context, right? So give us the skinny, like, who's involved, who, what, when, where, what are the main themes of this untold story of yours? Tell us more.
Yeah, I would say the first one was in 1969. I was burned. I was 8 years old, and it was life-threatening. I was doing a home play. It was near Christmas time, and we were doing a play. My mom was out Christmas shopping, and the kids that were being babysat, we were all going to do a play for our mom was when they got back. And I was Santa Claus, and I reached over a candle, and it melted the tape on my cotton balls that were around my wrist, and I had a cotton ball made beard. And I shook my hand, and when I shook my hand, my beard exploded in my face.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and thankfully, I heard what I thought was the voice of God because nobody in the house said anything. And it told me in 1969 to jump around and roll around,
Oh my goodness.
and you'll be fine. And stop, drop, and roll didn't come into the vernacular till 1972 or 73. So
Right.
I'm kind of looking at that as divine intervention. And, trauma, right? And not that everybody has traumas like that, but I basically went into survival mode and how do I fix and how do I fix? Because I'm kind of a fixer and you kind of see those things even early in life. And so I never thought it was a big deal in a sense because, okay, we got through that. All right, what's next in life? Here we go. And then I joined the Coast Guard in 1983,
Mm-hmm.
which was not many years after that. And so I thought, all right, well, I'm going to do this, not knowing that I'm walking into a world of world of trauma when I go into search and rescue.
Right.
When I didn't deal, I'm just going to say for me, I didn't deal with the traumas of my childhood, and I walked right into what I used to call the Ricky rescue system. I think we all somehow, some way want to be rescued.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be rescued, so I wanted to help others. And so for whatever the reason is that we get into certain things, we go in with certain ideals and we come out with scars sometimes. And so through search and rescue, we didn't have the speed that they have these days in the Coast Guard. And so we were very often late to a rescue, which turned into a recovery. So we would go to rescue people and we'd be all hyped up to go rescue somebody, and we'd literally end up picking up dead bodies. And so that was very traumatic. And I didn't know, but traumas build on each other. And of course, in my mind, not a big deal. Keep going. You got to keep moving.
Mm-hmm. So dismissing the intensity of what you're experiencing and just brushing it completely down, like just brushing it under the rug.
And go to the next thing. And then when you get out of the military, it's just like a lot of different things happen because it's such an adrenaline driven activity.
Right.
Then you get into this world of, people are like, oh gosh, do you miss the Coast Guard or whatever? It's like, I just felt like I was bored all the time because there was no adrenaline happening.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go into a depression and then you don't realize that. And then you just start going into some very destructive things. I did at least.
Mm-hmm.
And it all stems from, not addressing certain things that happen. And so that really became the editing of my life. Is I wasn't about to have a pity party and say, oh, woe is me, this happened to me, because that's to me what therapy was, which is completely wrong. But I didn't know any better. I didn't know that I didn't know,
Right.
because again, I thought I knew everything, right? So
Yeah.
it became a lot of traumas and just trying to cope with a lot of noise in my head, because I was editing a lot of my life because of it. I didn't want people to know the terrible things that I thought that were in my mind and that were haunting me, as it were. I'd look in the mirror and I'd see the scars, and people would tell me, "Oh, we didn't see the scars." Well, I would see a monster in the mirror
Right.
because all I saw were scars. So, our perspective and the perspective of others it's nice to get it, but if I didn't look at the things that I needed to look at, I couldn't see, use the word beauty. I couldn't see the beauty.
Mm-hmm.
All I could see were the scars. And so I had to come to a place in my life where I worked through that.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So would you say that your untold story is all about navigating that web of all the cumulative traumas that you experienced and not knowing that you were going through all the traumatic motions
Absolutely.
and going through the process of not even knowing that you needed to know, right?
Right. Yeah. I read a lot of self-help books, but I really came to the conclusion that that's great information, but sometimes you cannot self-help. You cannot help yourself. You need somebody from the outside looking in that understands these things, because I got so many tools by going to a therapist or going to counseling and finding people that understood how trauma works, because trauma is very different than grief. Grief is different than depression. You've got these things that are very different in our mental world, and it's nice to have somebody that understands how to navigate those things. Because otherwise, I was trying to navigate without a compass, without GPS, without anything. I'm just kind of wandering around in the ocean of my emotions and not really figuring it out.
Yeah. And self help materials, they're great tools. And they're great tools to use when we're doing things proactively or like as a prevention of things.
And good information.
Yeah. But not when there's acute stressors and acute stuff going on, right?
Exactly.
Or if you're in a place where you're like reflecting back on things, sure, but when you're acutely in the thick of that kind of intense emotion and a lot of confusion, then what happens is, that saying, less is more, right? So when you have all these tools and all this information, it is information, but if you don't know how to implement it or how to break it down into smaller parts,
Exactly.
or navigate it with customizing it with what you're going through, not just, something that's general for people to have as a starting point, it makes it very different. Like the self-help is great because it's very helpful in many different ways. But what you're saying is I needed the tools and the guidance and the slowing down and the step by step and the reassurance and the I don't have to do this alone and I don't have to have it all figured out in advance.
Right. And it can be more detrimental sometimes, because you read all these things and go,
Well, it's overwhelming. Even as a therapist, for me, if I'm going to give home practice or homework, I can't give someone, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things to do, it's not even going to get done.
right.
And so I can only ask them to do 1 or 2 things and then be like, okay, let's go master that and come back and tell me what that experience was. And if you nailed it, great. Then we know where your baseline and threshold is. And if there are things that we have to tweak and troubleshoot, then we can do that. But you can't possibly learn all the parts at one time.
No. And when you think you can and you don't, that will send you into a whole nother spiral.
Right. And especially if you're in that mindset of like outcome oriented, you're not focusing on the process. So there's no way you're breaking it down into smaller parts. You're just focusing on, so how do I get this done? How do I finish reading this book?
Exactly.
Well, I've read the book, so that means I know the stuff, so I can move on to the next thing. Does that sound familiar for you?
Exactly. I would start from the back of the book many times. It's like, what's the end here?
Right. You see? Starting from the back of the book. What a joker. But I appreciate your honesty. Okay, so Tracey, in a private conversation with me, you mentioned about bricks on the wall. Tell me about that.
Well, for me, yeah, it was the traumas that built on each other. So, if I go way back, my parents got divorced when I was 6. That was a big trauma because I was a daddy's girl.
Mm-hmm.
And then at 8, I got burned,
Right.
which was a 10-year out patient process. So that was 10 years of different surgeries and whatnot, which each one was probably traumatic in and of itself. And so each trauma is a brick.
Mm-hmm.
And what it did to me is it would just go in this, and I would start setting them aside and I built a wall because I wasn't dealing with these things. So every brick got up again, the wall got higher and higher, and the wall was keeping people out. It was keeping me from relating to others because I knew what the trauma had done to me, and I was not about to put that on somebody else.
Right.
So I never talked about it. So I never talked about the traumas unless somebody asked about the burns, and I would tell a story, but it would be a very funny story because humor was my great deflector. And so I wouldn't let anybody understand how deeply it hit me. And possibly because I didn't know how deeply it was.
So would you say as the bricks got higher, layer by layer, would you say that you experienced isolation?
Absolutely. There were times where, people are like, hey, we're going to go out and do this. And it's like, no, I'm busy. Well, the joke now is I was so busy in my head with so many different voices. It's like I didn't even have any space to put anybody else in there or to put another event or anything. I was too busy just trying to calm my own mind. And so I just isolated. It's just like it's easier not to talk to anybody because there's just too much going on and too much to edit, as it were.
Right. Too much to edit.
I was buried. I was buried in my own thoughts.
Mm-hmm. You've been talking about how you had these symptoms. You didn't know that it was post-traumatic stress, but certainly it was. And so how long was it undiagnosed for?
It was easily 30 years, even if I go back to just the Coast Guard time. That was in 83, 84. So you're talking 40 years just for that.
Okay.
This was in 2014 or 15, somewhere around there. It really started. A friend of mine posted on social media these 16 characteristics of post traumatic stress. I'm an information hound, right? Because I'm always doing all this self help stuff. And so I'm reading it, and it's like I read these, and I'm like, in my mind, I'm going, holy crap, if I can say that. I have 14 of those
Mm-hmm.
through counseling and therapy and whatnot. I found out there's like 44, and I had 42 of those. And I was just like, oh, but that was my first little kind of light bulb where it's like, maybe this is something I'm dealing with. And of course, at that point in time, I'm like, nope, that couldn't be it. And just keep moving.
Right.
Then the final light bulb, two last light bulbs. One was I was working with a patient on scar tissue. And when I talk to people about scar tissue, I say the exact same thing. If we don't work on this, you will lose your range of motion and you will constantly have pain. Pain is an indicator that something's wrong. And we should have full range of motion. And as I was saying that, I literally, the light bulb in my head, because of the prior post of my friend years before, I realized that the scars of my patients and the scars that I have physically are very much like our emotional scars. If we don't look at them, we lose our range of motion, right? We lose that range of emotion, and we also still have pain. And I was like, oh, I think I need to look at some things. So that was my next light bulb. And then a friend of mine was helping me to write a book, and that was 2018 now. And I started to write this book, and I realized I could not look at a blank page. I couldn't tell my story because I'd never told my story really. I continued to edit it.
Right.
So I'd never told my story and I couldn't. And so I told my friend, I said, we're putting this on pause for a year because I'm going to start therapy.
And that's when you started therapy.
And that's when I started therapy. It was in 2018.
Wow. Okay.
Okay, let's just open Pandora's box because I was afraid. I was so afraid that if I started looking at those traumas, that I would not be productive in my life and society and my family. It feels like a death. It feels like you're just going to just not survive it. And so it's easier to just kind of let me just muddle through this and if all goes well, I'll make it through. It doesn't have to be like that.
It doesn't have to be like that. But surely when you first start unpacking all of that, I mean, it is going to feel heavy. It is going to feel like a lot.
And it's a battle.
And it is a battle, but it is short term and it's temporary. It doesn't actually kill you.
It's actually what makes you alive.
Right. Bit by bit. But the initial feeling is a lot. And so it's not that you were wrong about feeling those things and worrying and anticipating. But I guess the part that you didn't have awareness of was that I can get support and help and be guided through it. I'm not going to be alone, and that I'm not going to get to a place where it's dangerous for me.
Right. It's actually probably the least dangerous place you've been in years.
Right.
because it was the least dangerous place for me, because every time I went, yes, it was a battle to get there, but once I got out of there, you almost feel like another brick is coming out of the wall, another thing is coming off your shoulders, another deep breath is coming. And it's amazing I told people, I said it was literally like going from looking at life in black and white to seeing technicolor.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the process. You're processing through this black and white world that's gray, and there's sparks, there's little places where you can laugh and stuff, but the authenticity of who I was not around until going through the process of looking at things. That's when I became an authentic person.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, because I mean, there was so much that had to be unpacked, right?
And everything had to be hidden otherwise.
Right. So tell me more about you are a scar tissue therapist now, right? You just shared about how you had that moment of recognizing the physical and emotional scars. If they're not dealt with, we will have this residual pain. It's not going to go away. So, what was that process like for you to come to heads with that?
I would say it was repetition, because I've worked with thousands of people. I've been specific to scar tissue therapy for 14 years now. I like to educate people as to why we're doing what we're doing and why you have to go through a little bit of this pain in order to get to the other side. And so it's almost like every time I would say it to somebody, it would go into me and start to do a work of unwinding all the times that I did not address things.
So, the psychoeducation to others was really like,
An education for myself.
yeah, it's like an education for yourself, but it was like it was part of your embracing it. So that repetition that you were giving to all your patients, the number of people that you were seeing, and over time, it kind of settled into your own message subconsciously. And then what changed for you when had that moment?
What happened is I had that realization that I have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times we walk around through this world thinking we don't have a choice, but we always do. We always have a choice. And I didn't think I had a choice. I just thought, I call it Popeye syndrome. It's like I am what I am. Now that I see this, when you know better, you do better. So I knew at that point in time, it's like, wow, okay, now I have an awareness and I have a choice to make. I can choose to walk into a better version of myself, and however that happens, I didn't know how it happened, but I know that right now I have choices that I can start looking for options out of this isolation. And I had the choice of not, but I had a very clear picture of what not looked like, and I didn't like it anymore.
Right. So you had the realization was I have choices, I have options. And so was it a feeling of like feeling empowered?
It was definitely an empowerment, but it was also, I don't think I recognized that it was so empowering. It was scary, because it's like any time you walk into an unknown.
Mm-hmm. Right. But you were ready to walk into the unknown though.
Yeah, you have a different mentality towards it, and I was ready to walk through the adventure of it rather than thinking it is some terrible thing that's about to happen to me.
Right. It's all about mindset. And that's what I'm inkling towards is based on you were sharing. I realized I had this choice. I had these options. And sure, you might have been experiencing feeling empowerment, not knowing it was there. And the scaries were surely there because anything to do with the unknown, uncertainty, it's inevitable that we're going to feel scared, right? We can't not feel fear. But there was something about that you were still ready. You're still ready to kind of go through the motions because in that process, you're like, but I still have choices. I still have choices. I have options, even if it's scary.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, because what am I going to choose? I'm going to go for excitement because I love adventure. I love doing things that are out of my comfort zone, other than emotionally. I did a lot of crazy things physically, but emotionally, it was paralyzing. And so I had to flip that switch and go, no, this is just another adventure. It's just an adventure into my mental world.
Right. Okay. So Tracy, when people come to see me in the therapy space, people are typically in one of three places. Some people are getting started where they're like, hey, I think starting therapy is a good thing. Life's full of turbulence and different moments. And, I've had my fair share. So, I think it's healthy to start talking about it. So I want to do that. Then we've got people who are in the middle where They're aware that there's some work to be done, but maybe they have arrived to therapy because there's an acute stressor. So they're in the thick of something, and things are actively going on, knowing that once those things subside, that there's more things to unpack. And then there's people who are looking back. So they are saying, I want to move on in my life or move to the next chapter, but I recognize I've been through, ABC, XYZ. I've been through all these different things, and I want to just process a couple of things, or I just want to bring some closure or be able to have some things to reflect on so I can become the best version of me. So this is how I typically see people present themselves when they inquire about therapy or want to start that process. So for yourself, based on the untold story that you have shared about you and your journey, what part of the journey would you say that you are in? Would you say that you are just getting started, in the middle, or looking back?
Oh, I'm looking back.
Mm-hmm. How do you know you're looking back? What makes it clear?
Well, I'd have to say one of them is a peace and a comfort with in my own skin, as it were. The emotion, I think, in many ways comes out physically. Yeah, it's like before starting the journey, there was always discomfort in my gut, like this anxiety, a constant anxiety, because of course I had to constantly edit, and every day you go out and it's like, what battles am I going to fight, right? And now I don't look at days as a battle. I look at days as a gift. I look at days as just another opportunity to be me and be authentic. And so it's a looking back with a very quiet tummy, no anxiety, understanding that I am enough. Whatever you see, whatever you get, it's what it is, and it's not only enough, it's perfect. It's exactly what it should be. And the beauty of the looking back process is it's not that you're done.
No, it's not about being done, but especially like with the parts of the story that you share too, right? This is very clear to me about how I know you're looking back, right? Because you say clearly, I have this peace and comfort in my own skin. You're telling me that I can look at days as gifts and opportunities, and that I understand truly right now that I am enough. I embody this. So that's the work. That's the healing work. That's almost the stuff that you would remember about your process of your healing journey that reminds you that this is how far I've come. It doesn't mean that we don't have more unknowns in life. Life is still going on. There's still different things to encounter, but we're not talking about the journey of life. We're talking about the untold story, which is a part of you, but it doesn't have to dictate you.
Exactly. And that's the huge thing. It doesn't dictate and it doesn't define.
No.
It's information and it's informative of who I am. And yes, that's where I've been and things I've done and things that have happened, but it's not my whole life story. And that's part of the thing that I found, that in living in the trauma of my life, I was constantly living in it.
Right.
And so that was defining and that was my life. And it's like, no, it's something that has informed my life and it's given me some great insights on things, but it's not everything. And it doesn't define. It just informs.
Right. So, Tracy, we have unpacked quite a number of layers of your story and different timelines of when some of the big themes have been really experienced and prominent for you in this journey of PTSD and navigating it, not even knowing you had it, and all of the pieces that happen in between. So, tell us, how has your untold story affected your mental health? There's a lot of things you spoke about in a broad range. I know there was a lot of dismissal and a lot of brushing it and editing. But if you think about what you weren't editing and what you weren't brushing, what did that look like while you were going through this?
Oh, underneath there was just constant uncertainty. There was a lot of insecurity. I felt like I was completely out of control. There was nothing that I could manage. I was just holding on.
So paint a picture of out of control. What does that look like?
Out of control was, there was times that substance abuse, I would maybe drink too much or indulge in, and there's marijuana and all different kind of substances to numb everything, because I was trying to quiet everything. I was just trying to quiet my mind and get away. I was trying to get away from me because I thought I was the problem. So if I could just numb that or get away from that for a while, it was the only place that I could find respite. And so that there's no need for that now, because I like who I am. I like what I've become. And so I don't have to, I don't want to numb that. I want to see everything. I want to see it all. And I couldn't see it all before because I overload from information that I'm trying to suppress, or overload from information that's coming in, or just constantly being overloaded, which was just unbearable.
Sure. So then, if you were in that state, were you able to have connected relationships or have deep conversations?
Any deep conversation was pretty much deflected in one way or another.
Hmm.
And I did not have any real deep connections, as it were. I mean, I love my family, I love my friends, but Brene Brown says it's like courage, starts when we allow people to see us, and we look at them and we see them for who they are. And no, I didn't allow anybody to see me.
Hmm.
So if nobody could see me for who I was and all that I was, then I was not able to make those connections. Courage and connection starts there, right? And so I did not have those connections because I couldn't show up.
Right, right. Because it was all just too painful.
Yeah, it was too much. It was just an overload. It's like, where do you start? But the beautiful thing is I'm very blessed in that I've got friends that I've had for 40 and some for 50 years, and of course your family. And it's like, we've because of the things that I've done as far as therapy and looking at things, I've been able to make those connections now, and it's just amazing. It's really amazing.
Right. So you did the work, you've done the work, you've done the reflecting, you've done the engaging, you've embraced so many things, you've integrated, and now you're able to say, with depth, I have meaningful relationships.
Yeah, which is amazing.
So amazing.
But it's a choice, and some choices are not easy because we just don't know what's on the other side.
Right. Are any other aspects of your mental health that was impacted that you haven't shared yet that you think is really important to share?
I mean, the connection to others is probably the most imperative thing because we are created to be relational beings.
Yeah.
And we could be amongst a million people and still be isolated. I was.
Right. So for you, that the connection to others was really what was the most impactful to your mental health because it must have bled in so many different directions. And what you're saying is after being able to reclaim that, it really it helped you regulate.
It changed everything. It literally changed everything. Took life from black and white to Technicolor.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, just billion different colors. And you're like, wow, never knew it looked like this. This is pretty awesome.
Yeah, that is awesome. So tell us, what is your key message to the listeners of the show? What do you think is most important for them to know?
Be courageous. And courage is not a lack of fear. Courage is moving in the midst of fear. And we can all find that place, but I'm telling you, it's it is absolutely worth it. If anybody is out there that's looking, that is even wondering if they're missing something. If you're wondering that you're missing something, then you're missing something. And be courageous to make, just all you have to do is make one choice. Just choose one thing. You don't have to choose a million things. Choose one thing in the direction of your authentic self. Choose one thing that will move you in the direction towards connecting with others deeper.
Mm,
Just take one step, because you can only take one step at a time anyway.
that's a beautiful message. I mean, you've marked some really big moments that were some of the pivots that you've had in your untold story. What I'm curious about, what was like that game changer inspiration that's really close to you that reflects your untold story? Like, would there have been a quote or a book or a place or a time or an event or something that really spoke to you?
It's a lot of little things, but I have to say, if anybody ever gets a chance to see Brene Brown's
Daring Greatly?
Daring Greatly, yes, watch it, because when I watched that, I was probably close to being in the process.
She does have a TED Talk and she also has a book. She's got, I mean, a ton of materials.
Yeah, and the TED Talk was the thing that probably put me over the edge. It was so inspiring, and it's like it's what I wanted. I wanted deep connections, so I was willing to go through the scary thing. And I always ask people, it's like, well, what do you want? And most of us spend more time on a vacation, planning a vacation, than we do looking at what it is that we want in life. And it's like, well, what do you want? And what are you willing to do to get it? Well, I really wanted deep connection, so I was willing to go through the scary things.
And so Brene Brown it is. She just nailed it for me. Okay. So then tell us, what is a cause or an organization that has been impactful to you on your journey that you would like to give a shout out to?
I'm a Coast Guard veteran, and I went to the VA. They have an amazing trauma program. So I was very fortunate to go through that. Now, that's just for veterans, but I try to support veterans too. And so they have, and every state, I believe, has what's called AMVET, AMVET. So you can donate. I donate any of my things that, as far as clothing or stuff.
So the donations can be like monetary, but not necessarily.
And it helps with veterans that are homeless. It helps get veterans off the street, and so that's dear to my heart.
Wonderful. All right. So how can people connect with you if they would like to? How are you findable?
I am findable mostly on my website, Rescue to Recovery. My book is there. I've got a YouTube channel, Tracey Brown Says. There's a lot more out on Instagram.
Wonderful. So we've grabbed all of your handles and your information, and it's actually on your show notes page now. So if people come to the daretoshare.co website and just click on Tracey Brown or episode 130, they'll find you and they'll be able to click all over your name. So that's fantastic. So Tracey, guess what?
What?
You've just dared yourself to share. Congrats.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This has been an amazing, wonderful experience. Thank you so much.
Oh, wonderful. Tracey, I really would just like to take a moment to even express on a serious note, my gratitude for the deep story shared in this space today. You speaking openly about your experience with post-traumatic stress disorder, drawing the connections to the mental and physical scars and how these wounds have carried forward in your world. Also speaking with such depth and honesty on what it took for you to be able to get to a place to share your honest experiences without editing your story. And getting to that place where you now show up as the phoenix who's risen. So that's beautiful. So I'm truly grateful to have been able to hear and witness your story today. So thank you for the deep conversation and for all the daring and sharing.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tracey. And once again, thank you for being part of Dare to Share Your Untold Story and helping to be a voice in breaking down the barriers of mental stigma. To all of our listeners, if you like what you've been hearing on this podcast and you want to be part of breaking down barriers of mental stigma, I invite you to go wherever you are listening to the episode and hit subscribe. Leave us a comment or a review of the episode and maybe how you relate to it. To learn more about what we offer, visit www.daretoheal.co. And if you are feeling ready and brave to share, please submit your story by visiting www.daretoshare.co. Thanks for joining in.